G'day, Richard here. As you may know by now, we're back and making new podcasts. But with work commitments, we may not finish a new podcast every week, so we're planning to handpick some of our favourite podcast episodes from our back catalogue and republish them, along with some updated commentary of why we liked each episode and what's changed about the subject since the podcast originally aired. Last time, I handpicked a show. It was an episode where I had the pleasure of talking to Dr. David Ludwig of Harvard Medical School, who I consider to be one of the more influential researchers working on increasing the evidence base supporting ketogenic diets. But he is not the most influential. That honour goes to my next guest, Dr. Sarah Hulberg, and her co-author, Dr. Stephen Finney. I had the pleasure of meeting Sarah at the Food for Thought conference in Zurich, Switzerland in 2018. I was a first-year biochem student at the ripe old age of 52, and I'd just completed my first semester, so I kind of felt a little bit out of place at the conference with all the influential diet researchers on the planet. I got a hug from Jenny Brand-Miller, and I got a selfie with Salim Youssef. I shared a Kobe beefsteak with Gary Taubes, and I got to observe Walter Willett at a buffet of smoked meat hors d'oeuvres. For the record, he chose smoked venison with a horseradish cream sauce, which was an excellent choice. But the highlight of my trip was to finally meet Sarah Hallberg, who was the lead author on a study titled Effectiveness and Safety of a Novel Care Model for the Management of Type 2 Diabetes at 1 year, an open-label, non-randomized controlled study. This study showed that frank type 2 diabetics with a mean time since diagnosis of 8.4 years, eating a ketogenic diet reversed the progression of their disease with 94% reducing or eliminating the need for exogenous insulin. If you're a type 2 diabetic and your doctor isn't willing to let you try a high-fat, low-carb diet to treat your diabetes, Sarah's study is the best evidence we have to date that you can share with your doctor to have an enlightened conversation about the subject. I would not be surprised if this one study of hers will end up saving millions of type 2 diabetics. About a month ago, I was listening to a podcast by Peter Attia interviewing Sarah, and I learned that Sarah has stage 4 lung cancer. In fact, at the conference where, as you will hear, I was really quite sick with a random flu that I got from some Russians on the plane. She was at the time going through chemo and very sick herself. I dread to think now that I could have unknowingly exposed her chemo-depressed immune system to a new pathogen, but I'm grateful that I apparently didn't. Sarah's a fighter, and I hope she's around for a long, long, long time so we can all adequately thank her for her work. And now, without further ado, episode 122, Sarah Hallberg Reverses Diabetes.
Welcome back to Two Keto Dudes. Well, one dude and one very sick dude.
That's me, the sick dude.
This is Carl Franklin from Connecticut in the United States. And in February of 2016, I put myself on a ketogenic diet to take control of my metabolism. In just 2.5 months, I managed to reverse all my markers of type 2 diabetes with diet alone. As of now, I'm 80 pounds lighter with no signs of diabetes or heart disease.
Hi, I'm Richard Morris in Canberra, Australia, and I'm one sick puppy. I've got the sexy phlegm.
You have to tell us the story of how you got it.
I will, but first of all, I'm going to tell you that I've been on a ketogenic diet since April of 2014. And when I started, I was very sick with complications from type 2 diabetes. Within 6 months of starting a ketogenic diet, all of my biomarkers of disease had disappeared. I've lost about 100 pounds, so I've completely turned my health around.
In this show is a document of our experiences thriving for years in ketosis.
And reversing diabetes, as long as our voices last.
And hopefully that might help a few people who are curious about this kind of dietary hacking.
Yeah, we're not doctors. We don't want to give anyone medical advice, but we are keen to share our own experiences. We're actually both software developers, so we're not afraid of a little technical detail, are we, Carl?
Not on your life, sir.
We've done some research into our own deranged metabolisms and the science behind that. And we share studies that we've found in the show notes.
You'll probably work out pretty quickly that we're both foodies.
Oh, yeah.
We love to cook and we love to eat.
Yes, sir.
In every episode, we both share a keto recipe that cannot, will not, shall not, and therefore will not, as I said, be ignored. So let's start podcast number 122. Sarah Hallberg reverses diabetes.
Heard you say you're due for a little.
So, Richard, do we have any apologies or corrections from last week's show?
Yeah, that was number 121, Kirsty Wood, low-carb exercise physiologist. Actually, we misspelled her last name. Her last name is Woods, not Wood. I'm so sorry, Kirsty.
Yep, it happens. Very sorry about that, Kirsty. But it was a great interview, and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's revisit what a ketogenic diet is, Richard. Ketogenic diet is any diet that puts you in a state of nutritional ketosis, which is where your body is burning fat, either body fat or plate fat, for fuel. And to get there, you need to eat 20 grams or less of carbohydrates every day. And and you need to have moderate amount of protein, which is 1 to 1.5 grams of protein for every kilogram of lean body mass you have. At least that's how we did it.
That's how we did it.
Yep. And all of your energy comes from fat.
We get our energy from primarily 3 sources: carbohydrate, fat, and protein. And protein's like the backup for when you don't have any carbohydrate and fat. You shouldn't be getting energy from that. Most people get their energy from carbohydrates, and they're locked into that all their lives. And what we've discovered is that if we can get our energy from fat, we don't need any carbohydrate, we become more healthy. And that's how it's worked for us.
And without going into it a lot, you can't really use both at the same time. You have to either use carbohydrates or glucose.
Don't eat donuts, people. Don't eat donuts.
Right. Sugar and fat at the same time is a bad recipe. You really can't utilize both of them at the same time.
Yeah. So, I have no problem with somebody eating only sugar, as long as they have no fat at all.
Right.
But that's almost impossible. So,
almost impossible.
Yeah.
So, Richard, how was your week? I hear that from the tone of your voice, that it was quite interesting.
I has the pestilence.
What happened?
I probably got it from Gary Taubes or Sarah Hallberg. Because all three of us were sick.
You said you were sitting between 2 guys that were sick on the plane, right?
I was sitting between 2 Russians from Dubai to Zurich, and they were coughing the whole time. So there's a good chance I picked it up from them, but it didn't really manifest until about 2 days into the journey, by which stage Gary Taubes was already sick. So, who knows where these things come from, but the end result is...
He may have not been on that same plane because he was coming from California, right?
Yeah. Yes, that's right. I think Sarah was coming from Idaho or something. Anyway,
so maybe you got them both sick from those guys on the plane.
I hate to think that, because they both got me healthy.
Yeah, right. Someday there'll be an app that'll track all that, right?
Work out who's patient 1. Yeah, so my past week was very interesting, in fact, now that you ask. So I've been all over the world. And interestingly enough, I never had a foreign currency in my pocket. Everything was on credit cards.
Wow.
Everything was on, like Uber was on my phone. So I literally went through 3 countries in the past month without ever having to change currency.
That's so cool.
That's an interesting thing.
That is cool.
This trip was actually to Zurich to a conference called Food for Thought, which is run by the British Medical Journal and Swiss Re, a large insurance company. And it was all the traditional food and nutrition experts. Walter Willett from Harvard, Darius Mozaffarian from Tufts, Salim Youssef from McMaster's, Jenny Brand Miller from University of Sydney. These are the experts in high carb, low fat nutrition, and they presented a lot of their papers. And then at the end of each paper, there was a panel, and this is common for nutrition conferences, but normally there's no low carb people on the panel.
Yeah.
But in this case, we had a person on every panel. And so when somebody like Jenny Brand Miller says something like, well, ketogenic diets are only reasonable for men to be on for short term, nobody can stay on for very long. Sarah Hallberg, who was on the panel, was able to say, actually, we've had 260 people on a ketogenic diet, and we've got an 83% compliance.
That's amazing, actually.
Yeah, it
83%.
is. I mean, if there's a chocolate factory in Australia that allows their employees on the line to eat as much chocolate as they want, and within a couple of weeks, people just stop eating chocolate. So
right. You get the same effect if you're a cook, like at a fast food restaurant.
Yeah,
like the last thing you want to eat is fast food, especially from that restaurant.
So even the eat as much chocolate as you want diet doesn't have 83% compliance. So, she was able to show, and she knows they're compliant because she measures their ketones.
Yeah.
And so, we're going to talk with Sarah later on in the interview, but that it was fascinating. So this conference was really an eye-opener because they came up with several statements. In fact, one of them I might have provoked a bit, but so after the panels, they have a Q&A, and every panel Q&A session, I've got my hand up like, miss, ask me a question, miss. And,
Mr. Carter!
Mr. Carter! and the lady on the side of the microphone keeps skipping past me because, there's all these famous nutritionists in there. There's a troublemaker in a black T-shirt over there. There's all these nutritionists in suits. We get the microphone to them. Anyway, at the end of the conference, we had Darius Mozaffarian come up and give an eloquent and quite a well-respected defense of epidemiology. And he was basically saying, look, the only way we can know anything with any reasonable amount of cost is through epidemiology. And he made a good case. And he was basically saying, we can actually show a direct link between a nutrient like saturated fat and a biomarker like LDL cholesterol. And we can show that people who have heart attacks, cardiovascular disease, are more likely to have a higher LDL. And so therefore you should be able to draw a straight line between the saturated fat and cardiovascular disease.
Right.
And then Salim Yusuf got up and he explained how you can't draw straight lines between these things.
Right.
So he was showing with salt. He said, we looked at salt intake, and normally you'd say salt intake increases blood pressure.
Yep.
Increased blood pressure is correlated with cardiovascular disease.
Right.
So you can
Therefore,
say eating more salt means more cardiovascular disease.
Right.
And he tested salt versus cardiovascular disease. So ignoring blood pressure entirely.
Right.
And he was able to find that that there is a U-shaped relationship, but it heads off very gently as you increase more salt. So the actual cardiovascular disease doesn't everyone expects it's doubling and tripling. No, it's a really slight, modest increase, even when you eat a lot of salt.
It's like when firefighters all converge on a home, there's a higher chance that home will be on fire. Therefore, firefighters cause fires. Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's the thing. And so I made the comment, everyone was missing this, that Salim Yusuf's Pure study discovered a couple of things. It discovered this salt thing that, we can all eat a little bit more salt.
Mm-hmm.
It also discovered that there was a correlation between increased carbohydrate and cardiovascular disease.
Right.
And he also discovered, this is interesting, there was no correlation between saturated fat in the diet and cardiovascular disease. And there was a positive correlation between saturated fat in the diet and stroke risk. So, in fact, the more, and it was dose dependent.
A lack of stroke risk. In other words, the more saturated fat, the lower your stroke risk.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah.
So, but the important thing, this is the question I asked. I said, look, Nina Teicholz yesterday said that the one piece of science that she really respects out of epidemiology is when it finds nothing. When it finds no correlation, you can probably use to that to infer that there is no causation involved. But if you find a correlation, unless it's really large enough, you really can't infer causation. So I said, well, I'd like to invite the panel, Darius Mozaffarian from Tufts and Salim Yusuf from McMaster's.
Now listen up, people. Listen up to this is really historic, what Richard's about to say here. This is such a big take-home. Okay, now go ahead, Richard. Now everybody's primed and ready.
So I said I'd like to invite the panel to discuss the findings from the Pure study in the area of the lack of observed association between saturated fat and cardiovascular disease. And Darius Mozaffarian, this is the guy who is like the heir apparent of Walter Willett.
If you don't know who these guys are, as you said before, are all low-fat, high-carb, eat less, exercise more kind of proponents, plant-based.
Yeah, plant-based, whole-grain foods. These are the guys who've been driving this nutritional research out of a couple of massive epidemiological studies for many years. They've been going back into the same data and retorturing it.
Right.
So anyway, he said from the stage There have been 14 studies that I know of to test a causation between saturated fat and cardiovascular disease, and not a single one has successfully shown it. And Walter Willett sitting in the second row, and he didn't spontaneously combust.
Right.
So, and at the end of the conference, Fiona Goodley, who is the chief editor of the British Medical Journal, said, I think we can take a couple of takeaways from this conference, things that we all agree on, and one of those is that saturated fat is not a nutrient of concern.
Okay.
Boing.
This is such a momentous point in history that I want everybody to reflect on this just for a minute here. Anybody who tells you, you're going to kill yourself by eating all that fat, the experts, the vegan experts, the vegetarian experts, the low-fat experts, the exercise experts, the low-carb experts, everybody agrees that the science cannot prove a link between saturated fat consumption and heart disease.
Except the dietitians. And this is a myth that saturated fat causes heart disease. It is a myth that is unkillable by science. It cannot be killed with evidence, because 14 studies have gone in to show this, and it just cannot be killed.
Are you talking about among the dietitians?
Among the dietitians, among the so-called food practitioners in our healthcare practitioners, the food specialists, it just cannot be killed. So, it doesn't matter how many times you show it with evidence. The Pure study was 18 countries, about 1/3 individuals, and showed no correlation. It's still not adequate evidence.
But when you get the experts that represent these people in a room and they all agree, there's something compelling about that.
It is. Yeah. Well, at least we've got that. We've drawn a line under that. The other thing that happened out of this conference that was fascinating is that we all agree now that diabetes is reversible.
That's great.
Which wasn't the case before the conference. Yeah. So those are the two takeaways for me: is saturated fat is not an issue of concern, and we saw Darius Mostafaris tell us that essentially from the stage, and also that diabetes is reversible.
Type 2,
the lady we're going to interview today she's the one who has shown not only that it's reversible, but that she can reverse it in a lot of people in a very large study over a long period of time, and made the case from the stage during her panel session that diabetes is reversible 3 ways. We tend to think of all of the diabetes associations tell you it's a progressive disease.
Right.
It only gets worse.
Right.
But there's 3 ways to reverse it. A gastric sleeve operation will reverse your diabetes before any weight loss has happened.
Right.
Pretty much the first week, even before any weight loss has happened, diabetes is reversed. The second way of doing it is through caloric restriction, and that's Roy Taylor's work in Newcastle. And he's able to show with an 800-calorie diet for 8 weeks, he's able to get enough of the ectopic fat in the pancreas to go that the pancreas starts behaving normally, and so your high-end glucose stasis control is functioning again. And then Sarah Hallberg and Professor Finney were able to show in the Verta study how they can, by removing all sugar and starch out of the diet, you can get your low-range glucose stasis taking over the job, and instead of your pancreas being responsible for keeping glucose in control, it's your liver, and that also reverses diabetes. So there you go.
There you go.
That was
Take
my
your
week.
pick.
Take your pick. And so how was your week, Carl?
Oh my God, it doesn't compare to yours. That's astounding. I mean, that's momentous. I think when you tell that story, I'm thinking this is a historic moment, right?
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So anyway, my week was great. I'm spending a lot of time writing software and preparing for Keto Fest, of course, which is shaping up nicely.
Excellent.
And I just finished. We're recording this Saturday night, and on the 23rd, and so I just finished the 3rd Keto Mini Fest ever.
Nice.
And this time I did it at my house, and the theme was Ketoki fried chicken.
So it's a KFC experience.
Yeah, and, I don't want to actually call out the company by name for,
my apologies.
That's quite all right. I mean, everybody knows what we're talking about. It's fine. But the thing is that that was a real big childhood memory for me food-wise. And so I wanted to recreate the experience. And pretty much everything was dead on successful except for the cauli mash. And I'll tell you why. But it was, fried chicken with the right recipe and the right way to cook it.
And that was the recipe you gave us last week, right?
Yep. It was coleslaw. And it was cauli mash and gravy. And it was the chocolate parfait. Now, I know for a fact that KFC does not sell the chocolate parfait anymore.
Really?
Because I went through the drive-thru and I tried to get one.
Yeah.
No. But the chocolate parfait used to be a little graham cracker crumble at the bottom, some chocolate pudding, some whipped cream, top, probably Cool Whip, and some chocolate sprinkles on top. So basically what I did was I took crushed macadamia nuts and put those at the bottom.
Nice.
Salted roasted.
Better than graham crackers.
Of course. It's like real flavor, right?
Yeah.
And for the chocolate pudding, I made a chocolate anglaise. So I made a crème anglaise and I added Hershey's chocolate to it and a little bit of Hershey's special dark chocolate as well. And let that sit overnight, and that was great. And then I just made whipped cream for the top. But the coleslaw was the killer. And I had made a coleslaw before, and I did a keto coleslaw recipe. But this time I was like, no, I want to go for the actual taste of KFC coleslaw.
Okay.
And that is my recipe for today.
Excellent. I look forward to that.
But it was a great success. Everybody loved it. There's going to be pictures on that. And I do this through a local meetup, by the way, which I started at meetup.2keto.com. It's the New London County Ketogenic Meetup group. And since I started, we've got almost 350 members. Wow. And I had about 20 people come tonight from all around. One guy came from New Jersey.
Wow. That's not Raj again, is it?
No. This guy drove about 4 hours. His name is Charles. He drove about 4 hours just to come to dinner and hang out. And Amber was our guest, Amber O'Hearn.
Nice. The carnivore?
The carnivore, yeah. So it was great. We had a very, very good time. So, Richard, let's give away some swag.
Yeah, let's do that. So every show we pick a lucky winner at random from the members of the 2 Keto Dudes fan club.
Yes, and today we're giving away a treasure trove of stuff from vendors we like, all of which you can find at fanclub.2keto.com.
So who's our winner for this week?
Today's winner is Alicia Gardner.
Congratulations, Alicia. So let's tell everybody what she has won.
Well, the first thing we're giving away is a 2 Keto Dudes coffee mug that says keep calm and keto on.
Nice. And a signed copy of Lies My Doctor Told Me by Dr. Ken Berry?
Yes, and I have it on good confidence that audiobook, read by me, will be available by Keto Fest.
Excellent.
We're also giving away a packet of Pique tea, that's Pique tea, recommended by Dr. Jason Fung and others to support fasting. It's a dehydrated instant green tea with many flavors. Just add water, and you've got an amazing tea, iced or hot, that will help you with your fasting efforts. And a cheese-making kit from Pamela Zorn, who's going to be teaching cheese-making classes at Keto Fest.
And if you don't want to wait to win some swag, you can buy all sorts of it online at gear.2keto.com.
Absolutely. And that brings us to... Mail.
I cannot get in the last word. I think I just did, actually.
I'm not saying it. Give me one more mail.
Mail.
There you go.
So, Carl, what mail do you have for us today?
Well, this one is from the forum, and it's from the newbies, tips from the oldies category. This is from Moo Boom, who says, doing keto solely to lose weight? Read this. I was a starry-eyed newbie with huge expectations once. I get it. You're excited. Great swaths of weight are about to fall off you with relative ease. You'll be buying new clothes every month. You're shrinking so fast. Friends and family will be in awe of your dramatic, rapid weight loss. Only none of that is likely to be true. Sorry, pumpkins. Keto is not a magic bullet. Keto is not a diet. Keto is a way of eating which enables your body to undo years of metabolic damage, abuse from calorie-restricted diets, and metabolic dysregulation. Keto is primarily about health and healing. Yes, it's true that the weight will come off, but it will do it when it wants to. For some people, it happens fast, but I'm sorry to say, they are unicorns.
Yeah.
For most of us, it's a slow process with stalls and gains as well as losses. It's a journey which requires research, experimentation, trial and error, and overcoming your fear of fat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You'll probably lose an exciting amount of weight during your first week or two of keto. That is your body depleting its glycogen stores. Next up, you'll most likely stall, awesomely named PISS, P-I-S-S, which is Post-Induction Stage Stall. Yep.
That's from Atkins era,
yep,
right?
That's right.
Yep.
You may very well not see any loss on the scales, and you're going to want to freak out because you think you're doing it wrong or keto doesn't work. Wrong! Going keto is a big deal for your body. It's likely going to freak out a bit. After all, you've taken away its glucose, and it's wondering where the energy is going to come from. If you're suffering from the keto flu, type the word electrolytes into the search bar, research it, and follow it. You'll be glad you did.
Yeah. That's a little plug for the Ketogenic Forum search bar.
Yeah. Then it's going to start healing, rebuilding muscle, strengthening bone, bolstering your immune system, making you healthier. It's doing all that while your scales aren't budging. So please, do yourselves a favor and throw away the damn scales. They are no longer your friend, and never really were anyway. Get a measuring tape. Take your measurements. Watch your clothes fit better. Take progress photos. Who cares what you weigh if you fit into smaller clothes and look similar and healthier? Weight loss is not linear. Keto is about health. Weight loss is hormonal. Keep calm and keto on. You're going to hear those statements. Yeah. You're going to hear those statements a lot for good reason. They'll probably be uttered with a little weariness if you're less than a month into keto and complaining that you haven't lost 50 billion pounds too. Read as much as you can in this forum. Educate yourselves because there is a lot of info here just waiting for you to find it. It's a super exciting journey which you'll be so glad you started a year from now. Give it a chance, but do your homework and reset your expectations. We will be here to cheer you on.
Nice.
You know, I had this conversation tonight with a bunch of people who are always getting into conversations with people that they feel embarrassed because it seems like the ketogenic diet is a magic bullet, and that's a good That's a real. Let's unpack that word magic bullet or that phrase for a minute. We're so used to technologies and pills, drugs, whatever, working against the body, outsmarting the body to fix things, right? To fix problems. Yep. That's the way we think. We have to outsmart everything.
It's the assumption that our body doesn't know how to run itself.
Exactly. And the fact of the matter is, the truth is, the body knows how and can and will heal itself without your help. All you have to do is take away the stuff that's preventing it from doing so. That's what keto is.
Yeah.
You're removing the barriers for your body to heal itself, and all of these wonderful benefits happen, but it's not, it's not the eggs or the cheese or, or the butter. Or
the fat, or even all the fat.
Yeah, it's not.
None of that.
It's not that.
It's just not eating carbs takes away the derangement that has been spinning you out of control.
Exactly.
And once you're in control, once your body is able to reach its safe homeostasis, so that's what the body does. We've evolved over millions of years.
Right.
Humans have evolved over hundreds of thousands of years just to get to this point. And
we eat fat because we can get calories from it without deranging our metabolism. That's why we eat it. It's not that it's a magic bullet that's going to fix everything. Your body fixes things. The fat doesn't do it.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I was really excited when I read that, and I just wanted to share it. So
I actually have an interesting experience from the conference I was at. I'm going to name drop a few names, so I do apologize.
I was talking to the Pope the other day.
Yeah.
And the Pope said, take my advice, don't ever name drop.
So I was talking to Mark Hyman, Dr. Mark Hyman, the other day.
Sure.
And he was at this conference, and he's a well-known functional medical doctor, and he's the director of the Cleveland Clinic and all of these things. And I had just given this Q&A response where I started saying, look, I have to admit my own personal biases. My own personal bias is I was a type 2 diabetic. I reversed my disease on a low-carb ketogenic diet. And then I asked my question.
Right.
So he tweaked to this, and he wanted to see, have you really reversed your diabetes, and how much weight have you lost, and why aren't you losing any more weight? Why hasn't it stopped? Why are you still overweight? And I said to him, look, the goal for me was never weight. The goal for me always was health,
right.
and that my body has found its homeostasis. This is the point, the place that my body has settled when I got all the derangements out of the way. I'm personally quite satisfied with where it's at. He said, but yeah, you're going to lose some more weight though. And I said, well, I can guarantee to lose weight by caloric restriction, but if I do that, I'm just going to balloon back up again. And in the process of going down, I'm not going to be burning only fat. I'm going to be burning anything I can get energy out of, which includes lean tissue. So when I balloon back up again, I'll be in a poorer state. And he said, I've got to talk to Eric Westman about this because he disagrees with you. So we went over to talk to Eric Westman, and Eric Westman is a bariatric specialist, is a specialist in helping people lose weight.
Right.
He's very good at it. His opinion is you need a mild caloric restriction to be able to lose weight below being overweight.
Right.
And then just by coincidence, Stephen Finney walks into the room, and Stephen Finney is like, well, no, the homeostasis that your body will settle on. He was talking about the Finney weight. And by the way, he said he doesn't like his name associated with that. But this is the weight that your body is able to be most comfortable at when you remove all the derangements.
Right.
And he said, the new homeostasis, that's a wonderful thing. If you can get somebody to lose 100 pounds, pointing to me, and keep it off for 4 years, you've already done the impossible.
Right.
That's just not achievable in modern medicine. He said that's A+. I would grade that as A+. And he said, if you want to really get a high distinction, then over time, your body may lose some more weight. We see that happen in a lot of people, but the important thing is that you've maintain control of your glucostasis. And so anyway, that's the technical part, a conversation to this mail.
It's just so very cool.
I'm going to use that comment by Professor Finney as my mail for today.
Oh, all right. Awesome.
So there you go.
Very good. Very good. Well, let's bring on the interview that you did with Sarah Hallberg. We met her at Low Carb Breckenridge, and of course, I saw her TED Talk, and I was just in awe. It was great. She may have done more, but I saw at least the first one that she did, and I was very impressed. Yeah. And of course, now she works for Virta, as you said. She did this great study. So let's just roll that conversation, and we'll talk about it on the other side.
Sure.
Okay, I'm here in Zurich with Sarah Hallberg, and we both have horrible colds.
That's right.
So I apologize for the quality of our voices, but we'll do our best. So we're here at this conference where we've been talking about low carb, but first of all, the conference was a traditional nutrition conference with a lot of people like Walter Willett and Jenny Brand Miller, and Sarah was actually on one of the panels, and she presented some of her Virta studies. So tell us about Virta.
Well, yeah, so I am very excited to be part of Virta. So our company's mission, I'll start with that, is to reverse 100 million cases of type 2 diabetes by the year 2025.
Wow.
Which, sounds like a pipe dream initially, but I think that based on the results of our large clinical trial, which is what I discussed here, that dream actually may be a reality.
Wow.
So we, again, just published the 1-year results of our large clinical trial. We'll be having the 2-year results published hopefully sometime in the fall as we get a chance to write those up. But Virta is a two-pronged company.
Okay.
So in other words, we are a nutrition science company because in order to help people reverse their type 2 diabetes, you have to get nutrition right.
Yeah.
But the second part is really critical. We are also a technology company. And the technology and our remote continuous care platform allows us to support patients through lifestyle changes that are geared to induce nutritional ketosis as a means of reversing and sustaining a reversal of their type 2 diabetes.
So this is an app that runs on a smartphone that allows you to be in contact with the patients from the coaches. And I assume the patients type in their glucose or ketone numbers.
That's right. So the Virta treatment consists of 5 support modules, which are all enabled through the remote care. And so number 1 is the one that you're discussing, which is biomarker tracking. So every patient who begins the Virta treatment gets a cell phone enabled scale. So they step up on it in the morning and it populates straight into their personal app portal. And in addition to that, they input their ketones, as you talked about. We check beta hydroxybutyrate serum.
Excellent.
And blood glucose. And for those who need to, we also check blood pressure.
Okay.
So those biomarkers, obviously the patient can track those over time, but also critically important is those biomarkers go directly to the patient's individual health coach and individual physician.
Wow.
So the biomarkers allow the health coach to really personalize the nutrition intervention for each particular patient. So they use those to make the biomarkers to make suggestions and discussions about meals and meal planning.
Yeah.
The physician uses that data to make safe medication reductions because the goal is to get people off of medications, but people who are on a lot of medications to lower their blood sugars, especially insulin and sulfonylureas, if not managed appropriately, could be at risk for hypoglycemic events.
Sure, yeah.
So that physician supervision winds up becoming critical.
Yeah,
and
as you titrate the amount of insulin down. And
absolutely, until we're off, right?
Yeah,
and then, yay. Then there's less to be concerned about. Of course, we still need to monitor them, but especially in those first few weeks while we're decreasing medications, it's critical.
Yeah.
And then in addition to that, patients are also supported through a resource center where they can get everything from short educational videos on, everything from what is beta hydroxybutyrate to what about my cholesterol.
Nice.
And recipes galore.
Wow.
Yeah. And then the last thing is they're also allowed in on a optional, but most patients do take us up on it, community support group of their peers online.
Yeah, we find that's very important for people. I mean, we have a large community of people as well who listen to the podcast, and for them, these support groups where they can talk to other people who are going through the same process is really important.
It is.
That's wonderful.
It is.
Yeah.
The community support is critical.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I hope that through some of these online support groups, as we kind of spread the idea of low carbohydrate, high fat diets as a treatment for type 2 diabetes reversal, actually, what we see is that we eventually get to kind of worldwide critical mass. Because I'll tell you that we really have hit critical mass in my hometown.
Really?
Of Lafayette and West Lafayette, Indiana, where everybody is doing low carb. And so the support groups are happening organically, right? Because it used to be really difficult when someone was trying to follow a low carb, high fat diet to go in a work party, right?
Yeah,
it was used to be very difficult, right?
Yeah.
What does everybody bring into the work parties, right? They got donuts and cakes galore.
Sure.
And now, because so many people are doing it, even if there is an office mate maybe who's not, they all understand that the rest of the people are. And so, they help support each other by not sabotaging each other at some of these work-related things. So I think it's pretty exciting and hope that we can spread that to, other parts of the United States and, of course, around the globe.
So I find it fascinating, this idea of compliance. I mean, how many people are actually sticking to the program?
So that's a really important question to have answered, isn't it? Because it's one of the criticisms people try to make with a low-carb, high-fat diet aimed to induce nutritional ketosis. And the fact of the matter is people make that concern all the time based on no evidence.
Right.
And so our trial can just cement the evidence to the opposite end, because at the end of a year, we had 83% of our research participants still actively participating in the research program.
Yeah.
And so 83%, one of the questions that we have to ask is, who takes medications for a year at 83%? I mean, even that doesn't happen.
No.
So to be able to have nutrition compliance of 83% at a year is really remarkable.
It reminds me of the chocolate factory in Australia and Cadbury chocolate factory in Tasmania. They let the people working on the line eat as much chocolate as they want. And within about a month, nobody's eating any chocolate. So even the eat as much chocolate as you want diet doesn't have that level of compliance.
That's right. That's right. Oh my goodness. That is funny. That's right. You get sick of it, huh?
Yeah, exactly. No, so that's remarkable. So obviously the diet is varied. It's sustainable. These are some of the criticisms we heard from the traditional people, that a ketogenic diet is not sustainable and that it's very difficult to do, and that nobody really wants to stay on it forever. And the problem is, as soon as you go off it, all of your numbers go back to where they were. You're obviously showing that this is obviously evidently a very popular diet. People are enjoying it.
Right. And so, I'll go back to say the one thing we do have a lot of evidence of being non-sustainable is the low-fat diet, right? I mean, if there's evidence for anything, it's that is not sustained. I mean, we know that. So as far as the low-carbohydrate diet, the fact of the matter is this can be changed to suit anyone, right? Different cultural backgrounds, different, family traditions. You can modify what you're eating to fit into a low carbohydrate, high fat diet in all phases of your life and situations. And so that's one of the things I think that's key, is that it's not a one size fits all way of eating. We can restrict carbohydrates and increase fat, personalized, so that people do find it enjoyable and therefore sustainable.
Yeah. So we have a large audience of listeners who are ketogenic, and a lot of them have family members that are also diabetic. I mean, the people who listen to us are, for the most part, maybe 50% of them are diabetic and have found a ketogenic diet has reversed or at least halted the progression of their disease. But a lot of them have family members who they find it very difficult. Maybe they don't live with, and they find it very difficult to get onto a ketogenic diet. How could somebody get into a Verta program? Is that something that you're open for, or you're still on the clinical trials?
No. So the Verta program is open, and now we have many commercial patients as well as our patients in the clinical trial.
Great.
Currently, it's only available in the United States, but it is available in all 50 states.
Okay.
We do have long-term goals to go global. We're just not there yet. And right now, we do have a direct-to-consumer market, but we are mostly working with contracts with large self-insured companies and some insurance companies as well to make this available so that people don't have to pay for it, that it can get paid through their health plan at work.
Right. So do you have anything that is physician-based? I know that the physicians can have access to the patient and must have access to the patient data so they could modify the medication. Do you have a physician-centered approach where physicians can come to you and say, I've got so many diabetic patients I want to get on the Verta program? Or?
Oh, a referral? Yes.
Yeah.
We get a lot of referrals into the Verta program from physicians, correct.
And then would you train those physicians, or you would use your own physicians?
We use our own physicians. That's right. So we consider ourselves a specialty clinic.
Gotcha.
And so, anything surrounding type 2 diabetes is something that we take care of. And let's just I'll expand on that a little bit, because people think, well, type 2 diabetes, okay, you're monitoring their blood sugar, maybe their blood pressure, but there's so much more involved, right? Because we're also monitoring the behavioral aspects of this, right?
Yeah.
And things like, how's the patient sleeping? I mean, so when we're talking about type 2 diabetes, yes, we think primarily of blood sugar, and that would be correct.
Yeah.
But there's more to it than that. And so as far as the Verta treatment goes, we like to consider ourselves really an all-encompassing online specialty clinic aimed at type 2 diabetes, but that includes many facets of health.
Right. I know a lot of our listeners probably first saw you on a TED talk that you once did about reversing diabetes, which went viral. It was massive. So what was that experience like? You would have been one of the first physicians on TED saying, hey, it's possible to reverse this disease.
Yeah, so it was fantastic opportunity for me. And it was really interesting because it was 2 days after I met Steve Phinney for the first time. So
Okay.
is that hilarious?
Yeah.
So Steve Phinney and I were both at an Obesity Medicine Association conference, and I actually had to leave the conference early because I was giving the TED Talk 2 days later. But
Right.
I met Steve, and we had kind of planned a clinical trial. So it was a pretty big 3-day window of my life,
that was
so
a big,
to speak.
big moment.
So yeah, it was. But I was asked through Purdue to come and speak, and they all were aware of my clinic in Lafayette, Indiana.
Sure.
And so that's how I wound up getting the invitation. And I thought really long and hard about exactly what I was going to talk about. And the question of how much do you push the envelope, so to speak, in a talk like this. And really, ultimately, I decided I was pushing the envelope.
Go for
because,
it.
you can't, it was such an important message to get across that you need, this disease is reversible and you cannot get there by following the standard of care, right? And so I was hoping to be able to put out a really sensible plan, an easy to understand physiology behind why the plan actually made sense. And I feel pretty good that it did accomplish those goals. The feedback I've gotten on it has been really fantastic in that it was easy to understand for people.
Yeah.
And so I'm really grateful for that opportunity.
One of the things that I always credit you with on our podcast is that you were the first person who ever said, as far as I'm aware, if you're going to eat vegetables, put butter on it.
Yeah.
Put some kind of fat on it. And it's so true, I mean, vegetables without fat are boring.
They're boring. It's so funny in the clinic to see patients who, say, I could never get my daughter, my son, my husband, my wife to eat Brussels sprouts, but Brussels sprouts and bacon are now their favorite thing because, we really ruined vegetables for so long, right? By saying that you had to just steam them or boil them.
Yeah.
But, we like to consider at Virta that vegetables are a vehicle for fat consumption,
Yes, I love
right?
it. Yeah.
Never eat a vegetable without fat. So you have to cook it in butter or olive oil or cream, or you have to dip it in something if they're raw. And then you will not only decrease the carbs, increasing the fat, helping with that feeling of being full, but you'll also really enjoy the food you're eating too.
Yeah, nice. At the beginning of every show, we have a mail submission that somebody has sent us. Then we have the interview. And at the end of the show, we always have recipes. And Carl and I always do a recipe. And we think that people being able to cook their own food is like the secret sauce for going ketogenic. Because once you can do that, you have control over everything. So I notice you have recipes. Is that part of the program, is to teach people how to cook?
Well, so I would say teach people how to cook differently, maybe. So here's what I mean by that. And that is like, for example, when everybody left the house for the first time, right? Went off on your own, got your own apartment, went to college, whatever the case might be. You probably knew how to cook.
Right.
Your mom or dad probably taught you how to cook. But once you moved out of the house, you had to come up and develop your own routine, right? You still had to come up with your own schedule. Like, what do you do with a chicken breast that you've got, on a Tuesday night and you're hungry in 10 minutes. Like, you have to develop those. And so kind of the same thing when someone is changing lifestyle, I don't need to go and teach them how to cook, but we do have to help them develop a new repertoire, right? A new repertoire. Like, what is a good, really fast Tuesday night meal, right? And what is Taco Tuesdays can still happen, right? Just rethink it a little bit. And so, those recipes and giving people ideas and teaching them how to modify things is an important part.
Yeah. So one of the interesting things that we find for the ketogenic diet, and we don't really do it for weight loss, we really do it for the diabetes, but weight loss is something that certainly comes along with the ride, and it's quite a nice side effect if you're going to have one.
It is quite a nice side effect.
Yeah. So we generally find that after about 5 or 6 months, people tend to plateau and then they stay there for a couple of years before things start to slow down. Is that something that you see in the participants in your program?
Yes.
And how do you counsel them about their expectations for weight loss.
Right. Well, the big thing is to try to build expectations early on. So, we do see that. We see, if you look at our 1-year trial data, what we see is that people lose up to about 8 months, and then they flat.
Right.
Then they have a flat line, right? So they're not gaining, they're not losing anymore, they're really just staying stable. And, that weight loss plateau is something, that we're very interested in. How do you help people? How do you guide and counsel people about that weight loss plateau? And most of it is setting up expectations initially. But because, if you think about a plateau, they can understandably be super frustrating. I mean, if someone hits a plateau and I could say, hey, look, you're on a plateau right now, but September 6th, it's going to be over, right? I mean, people could do that. They'd be like, oh, okay, September 6th, it's going to be over, and I can live through there and not be frustrated. Yeah. But of course, we can't do that, right? No. We don't know how long it's going to last. And in some people, a weight plateau can last for quite a while. Yeah. And so, the other thing is again, setting up expectations and goals. And the goals, again, primarily, are metabolic health, not weight loss. Yeah. And so we have to, again, people need to be reminded, look at how far you've come. You know what I mean? No, you're not going to be a bikini model maybe, next week, but you're healthy now. You're doing these things that you weren't able to do before. And, there are ways that we could speed up and get out of a weight loss plateau, right? Like significant, insisting on calorie reduction, things like that. But, then you get into this, really? Is that sustainable? Or let's just be happy of where we're at right now, okay? Yeah. We're going to ride the plateau. And as you kind of pointed out, most of the time they do start losing again, okay? It's just that we can't give them a defined period of time that happens.
Yeah. I know when Stephen Finney came to Australia, he made a comment that was videotaped and that everybody has since captured. And this was, he made the comment that the weight that you will settle upon, your homeostasis, your new homeostasis, once you get all the derangements out of the whole scenario, the new homeostasis will be the weight that you're most comfortable maintaining. And, you don't have to work out 5 times a week if you hate it. If you work out 5 times a week and you love it, that's great.
Right.
But if you hate every moment, then don't do it.
Exactly.
And so we coined this the Finney weight. And I actually had breakfast with Dr. Finney this morning, and he was very unhappy with me because he doesn't like his name associated with anything that could have a potential downside. So I'm going to have to rethink what we're going to call that. But really, it is setting expectation. As you say, you're not going to be a bikini model, but you may be able to outrun one.
That's ding, ding. I love that. That's right. That's exactly correct. And, and enjoy things that you didn't, right? And not have to worry about, oh my gosh, I have to take my insulin before my meal, things like that. So, I think when we can get people to focus on those critically important health components and quality of life components, most people can ride a plateau.
Yeah. One of the things that has come out of this conference this week is the agreement from pretty much everybody from all sides of the picture that diabetes is reversible, and also that saturated fat is fine. It's not a causal effect. It's not a causal factor for heart disease, which is wonderful.
Yeah, that was a pretty remarkable moment, wasn't it? Yeah. So I think that, we are making progress, right, on getting this way of treating disease to be accepted in the mainstream. I still think that we've got some hurdles to cross, but I think the idea is what I really like to see come out of this is just more of a push of the consensus on disease reversal. The fact of the matter is, if we're not talking to our patients, and by we, I mean clinicians of all kinds, if clinicians are not talking to their patients about reversal, they are unfair. They are treating their patients unfair. They are taking away the power from their patients. They're taking away the choice and hope and all those things. Yeah. And they're central to healthcare. And so by acknowledging disease reversal is possible, discussing the various ways that it can be done with patients, which means that physicians and other healthcare providers need to be educated on the choices, and then allowing their patients to choose what is right for them. Yeah. So I think that's a huge move forward.
Yeah, well, one of the things that we're involved in is creating a patient-led revolution and basically teaching diabetics. I know what got me going in the first place was that I had a doctor tell me I was going to lose my toe if I couldn't maintain my glucose. And that was there's nobody as motivated in the whole diabetes scenario as the guy who's just about to lose his toe. So our goal is to start a patient-led revolution. But our listeners, if they talk to their doctor and their doctor says diabetes is not reversible, we get them to take the Verta papers in for their doctors and ask their opinion.
Yeah.
And that actually is a way to have a conversation, to start a conversation with their doctor. So I want to thank you on behalf of all of our listeners. Thank you very much.
Thrilled to hear that, thrilled beyond belief to hear that, because it's exactly what we need to do, right? Is we need to because in giving patients a choice, sometimes they just have to be their own advocate. So what you're doing is allowing patients to become their own advocate and arming them with something to take to their physicians. And in that, we educate yet another physician, right? Or another healthcare provider in that, look, here it is. I need you to support me in this, right? And I think that's fantastic.
Oh, thank you very much for spending time with me today and for all of the work that you've done. My listeners are going to be ecstatic to have heard you finally on the podcast.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been great to get to know you during this week.
Heard you say you're due for a little. Wow, so happy about Verta's research. Sarah and Dr. Finney are showing the world that low carb is safe and effective as a way to get healthy, reverse type 2 diabetes, and lose weight.
Absolutely. And that reversing diabetes is possible and delicious.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? I mean, everybody says it's possible. The dudes say, come on, it's delicious. That's what we're all about. But I really think that the consensus that was built around the conference in Zurich about the benefits of eating saturated fat among all approaches to diet and health, these are just momentous occasions. This is a momentous occasion. And I think there's going to be a video that is going to be edited of that interaction that we can show the panel talking about that, right?
Yeah, that's my goal.
Yeah,
so
we'll do that. Yeah. We're going to work on that. But in the meantime, let's eat. It's time for
some recipes. Outstanding, Carl. So what have you got for us today?
Well, as I said, I did the Kentucky Fried Chicken meetup here, which I pulled off by the skin of my teeth. I mean, I got up at 6 in the morning and I was cooking all day. Started cooking last night, but it was so awesome. Oh, my God. The chicken was great. It was just as good as when Emmy, my daughter, and I made it a couple of weeks ago, or last week, I think it was. But the real highlight was the Kentucky Fried Chicken style coleslaw.
Nice.
So as I said, I actually went through the drive-thru of Kentucky Fried Chicken, and I got a little side of coleslaw, and I just had a bite. Maybe I had 2 bites because I had to taste it. I had to know what this was if I was going to recreate it.
Right.
And everybody says I nailed it. So here's what you do. You get an 8-ounce bag of chopped coleslaw, which is usually, and sometimes they come with flavor packets, but you just want shredded white cabbage at the very least. Some of them come with carrots, some with red cabbage.
I would actually suggest, because carrots are quite sweet and have quite a lot of sugars in them, I would suggest using bell peppers or capsicum instead. Sure. So start off with your shredded cabbage, or just don't have them yet.
Yeah, exactly. So you got the cabbage. You need a half a cup of mayo, a half a cup of heavy cream, quarter of a cup of xylitol or other sweetener. Xylitol worked really, really well. And, the thing with xylitol is if you're new to keto and you're a glucose burner and you have xylitol, you're probably going to spend the rest of the afternoon in the bathroom. That's just going to happen. But if you're, if you're in ketosis and you've been in there for a few days, it's not going to bother you. Nobody had...
When you've been in the bathroom for a few days.
No, you've been in ketosis for a few days. I know what you're trying to do to me. It's not going to be a problem if you're in ketosis. So, like I said, there was 20 people at my house tonight. Nobody had a problem, all right?
So was the KFC coleslaw that sweet?
Oh, it's really sweet.
Wow.
That's why I only had a bite the other night.
Yeah.
But I had to taste it. I had to figure out what it was. So
I'm not sure that I'd find that enjoyable anymore.
Let me tell you, everybody raved about it here at the Keto Mini Fest. All right, so also you're going to have a tablespoon of vinegar, and I bought a bottle of champagne vinegar.
Nice.
Because I thought that had a nice citrusy flavor.
Yeah.
And here's the other thing that I tasted in there was a little ground mustard powder.
Interesting.
I could taste that sort of tang in the back of the throat. You know that when I'm talking about?
It wasn't like horseradish or something
No,
like that?
it wasn't horseradish. And it may have just been the cabbage itself, but I could taste it. And I know that ground mustard sort of amplifies that. So,
yeah. Well, cabbage is a mustard. It's a mustard.
Yeah, that's right.
It's a mustard
that's
family.
Right.
Yeah.
That makes perfect sense. So here's what you do. Now, the bag of coleslaw that I got had the long strands of cabbage in it, so they're maybe an inch to 2 inches long. But KFC coleslaw is chopped really fine.
Sure.
So what I did is I put it in a food processor, and I only chopped it with pulses. I only gave it like 12 pulses. So there weren't any big, long pieces left.
Don't overfill your food processor when you do that.
Yeah, I only put an 8-ounce bag in at a time.
Nice. Excellent. Good.
So then what I did is I put the xylitol and the heavy cream in a Pyrex and put it in the microwave for 30 seconds and then take it out and you stir it. And if it hasn't melted, put it in for another few seconds. But you want to essentially melt the sweetener into the cream. And then you just simply combine all the ingredients and you put it right in the fridge and chill it overnight, or at least 4 hours, but preferably overnight. And it tastes just like, I mean, seriously, there wasn't one person there who said, I could not tell the difference between this and KFC coleslaw.
That's outstanding, Carl.
The thing that amazed me is when I tasted it was the lack of all those other spices that I thought I needed to put in coleslaw to make it, good. But it turns out it's just a sweet and a vinegar and a little tang and the mayo and heavy cream, and that's it.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's outstanding.
That's it. That's what I got. So what do you got, Richard?
So I'm going to talk about a general principle, and this is the one that I got from Sarah Hallberg, and this is when you eat vegetables, eat them with fat.
Yeah.
Don't steam vegetables. It's a horrible thing to do to vegetables.
Why would you do that?
Unless you like steamed vegetables, unless you're that one weirdo who likes that. Like steamed Brussels sprouts.
Hey, that's Mr. or Mrs. Weirdo to you, sir. Have some respect.
Yeah, indeed. So I'm going to talk about a general policy of eating vegetables with fat.
Yeah.
So, for example, one of the recipes we did recently was we were talking about what you do with the fat in the pan after you've made a steak, because some of it renders out of the beef. Most people throw that away. Traditionally, in a low-fat world, we throw that fat away.
Right.
But that's perfectly good tallow.
Yeah.
And so what I do is I chuck spinach in there. Cup of spinach into a pan with fat from rendered out beef, and now we've got a lovely unctuous, and maybe you might need to add a little bit more butter to it, or a little bit of water to it to loosen it, to get some more steam happening. So that's the trick with spinach. The other thing is if you like Brussels sprouts, I find Brussels sprouts delicious. I know a lot of people have the genetic problem where they just cannot tolerate Brussels sprouts in the slightest. And I feel sorry for them, but I like to go to dinner with them because then it's more for me. But
if it's not Brussels sprouts, it could be asparagus or capsicum, peppers, or mushrooms. I mean, there's so many vegetables that you can cook with fat that taste great.
Yeah. Absolutely. So we've got 2 recipes on our blog for Brussels sprouts. One of them is deep fried Brussels sprouts. That's my recipe. And that's just with a little deep fryer with some dripping in it. And you just pop the Brussels sprouts in. It takes almost no effort to make food. And they come out with, so they're crisp. There's a little bit of the fat coating them, but that helps essentially carry the vitamins, the fat-soluble vitamins from the vegetable into you. So if you have your vegetable coated with fat, then you're more likely to be able to get your fat-soluble vitamins like A, E, K, and,
and by the way, it's a lot more delicious.
And it is a lot more delicious. The other one we have on our blog is Carl's broiled Brussels sprouts.
Oh, yeah.
And that's the other technique. And that's delicious. That with a little bit of bacon over the top.
Yep.
So good.
Some hazelnuts. Maybe.
Oh, yeah. Now we're actually turning it into dessert. So really my suggestion for you is to add vegetables to your food low carb, leafy greens, anything that grows above ground, pretty much except a banana, and you just add a little bit of fat. You don't have to add a lot of fat, but the whole idea is to coat the food so that one, the vitamins are going to come out a lot easier when it hits your absorbing surface of your gut, and the second thing is it tastes delicious.
Yes, it does.
A little bit of fat, a little bit of salt, and as we found out from Zurich, saturated fat is not a nutrient of concern.
Not at all.
And that's my recipe.
And that's a great show. Thanks to Sarah Hallberg, and thank you, Richard, for getting that interview.
You're welcome. Of course, if you have anything you want to tell us, something we said wrong, something you don't agree with, some more research you found to support or refute anything that we've said, send it by email to dudes@2ketodudes.com or post it on our website.
And you can follow us on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Instagram at 2ketodudes. Make sure to use the hashtag 2ketodudes.
And of course, if you want to join the free Ketogenic Forum, it's forum.2keto.com. And you can have a look around the Ketogenic Forum without needing to create an account by starting with success.2keto.com.
And if useless swag is your fancy, like t-shirts, coffee mugs, and all that other junk with witty keto sayings on them, head over to gear.2keto.com.
And if you want a shot at getting some of that swag for free, join the 2 Keto Dudes fan club. You'll be eligible to win something in every show. Go to fanclub.2keto.com.
And if you feel like supporting our forums and all the podcasts we produce, think about making a monthly pledge on our Patreon page at patreon.2keto.com.
And come to Keto Fest 2018. We're going to have a party. Go to ketofest.com.
You can also see all of our podcasts and other videos on YouTube at youtube.keto.com. And check out my cooking videos at carlsketokitchen.com.
And if you haven't already, go leave a review on Apple Podcasts. That's how new people get to know about what we do. And if you know where my voice has gone, please let me know. Dudes@2ketodudes.com.
2 Keto Dudes is brought to you by 2 Keto LLC, who strives to support the low-carb community with podcasts and other publications. Richard, keep calm, keto on, and fast when you can.
Yeah, keep calm, keto on, Carl, and Keto Fest at least once a year.
And we'll see you next time on 2 Keto Dudes.